The federal government is considering ban on motorcycle, call, Okada, and mining activities in the country after the National Security Council meeting in Abuja. And the Minister of Finance has been explaining the situation around the 2022 budget and about 3 trillion budget deficits that the nation is experiencing. We get some explanation about the state of the economy in the country. Hello everyone, warm greetings to you wherever you may be watching. This is Politics Today live on Channels Television. I'm Sean Wakimale in Abuja. Let's begin by telling you that we have our eyes still on the ball. As far as the ASUU strike is concerned, we are worried that some of the students of the public university in Nigeria are still at home idle. So we continue the countdown until the federal government and ASUU decide to call off the strike. The strike action by the university lecturers today is 157 days since February that the university lecturers in federal universities in the country began the strike action, keeping students away from the classrooms. This standoff between the federal government and the university lecturers continue, and the students continue to be idle. The president has given a 2-week ultimatum to the Minister of Education to ensure that the standoff is resolved. In fact, the Minister of Labor is saying it is possible to get it done in 1 week. So what are we waiting for? Nigerians are looking forward to the stakeholders getting their act together to resolve what has become a national embarrassment. We hope that something is done and done fast. Now, there have been a series of reactions to the events on the sidelines and in the heart of the unveiling of the All Progressives Congress Vice Presidential candidate, Senator Kashim Shettima, which happened yesterday in Abuja. The Christian Association of Nigeria has reacted to the controversy over the fake clergymen cited. That is what is now being called. They're being tagged as fake clergymen in some quarters. They were cited at the event, and the Christian Association has reacted. And in a statement signed by the PRO of the association, the Christian Association of Nigeria said it has dissociated itself from the unveiling of the vice presidential candidate of the APC, Kashim Shettima, saying those who were presented as church leaders are unknown clerics. They continue to say, we're shocked, disappointed, and worried about the desperation of some politicians who once claimed Christians do not matter in governance and politics, who went to hire some unknown bishops, pastors, and priests to impersonate the leadership of CAN in the political meeting. This is totally unacceptable, reprehensible, unprecedented, and ungodly. If they are saying Christians have no electoral values, why impersonating them in their meetings? End of quote. That is coming from the Christian Association of Nigeria. The Tinubu support organization have also responded to some of the talks that we're seeing, the videos that have gone viral, some of these folks that are talking about. In a statement signed by Mr. Bayo Ononuga, he says, quote, we want to say that those clergymen were not fake, not mechanics or yam sellers, as the purveyors of hatred have made Nigerians to believe in the social media. They are not big names in Christendom, yet they are gradually building up their missions. They are church leaders who genuinely believe that Nigerians must eschew politics of hatred and religious bigotry and rather embrace politics of peace and nation building. That is coming from the Tinubu support organization. Well, so much to talk about tonight. And you see, wherever you may be, if you need to call a friend, call them, because this matter, or the matters we are to discuss tonight, is very important. One about the economy, one about this, the other about the security. So get a chair and please listen carefully, because this is a matter that concerns every Nigerian, the 200 million of us, either you are in the country or outside of the country. It's very, very important, and we get to the heart of the matter. Anyone who wants to lead Nigeria, these issues are the kind of issues that we should be asking questions on how they want to deal with it. So we'll get to into the heart of the matter, or the matters tonight. But first, let's check our political roundup stories.
The head of service of the Federation has disclosed that a total of 3,657 civil servants have been taken before the ICPC for prosecution over failure to get verified on the Integrated Personnel Payroll Information System (IPIS). The head of service of the Federation, Folashade Yemieso, made this information public today during the ministerial media briefing at the State House. She disclosed that a total of 61,446 civil servants in the core ministries, departments and agencies have now been verified. The Independent National Electoral Commission has sworn in Mr. Gabriel Longpet from Plateau State as the new resident electoral commissioner to serve in Kogi State. Speaking at the swearing-in ceremony in Abuja, the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, urged the new resident electoral commissioner not to lower the bar for credible elections already set by the commission. The INEC boss also informed the gathering that the commission will on Friday, July 22, publish the personal particulars of all candidates nominated for the 2023 governorship elections, as well as candidates for the state houses of assembly.
Friday, 22nd July 2022. Publish the personal particulars of candidates nominated by their political parties for governorship and state assembly elections in all the constituencies nationwide as required by law.
The coalition of northern groups has expressed worry over low turnout of people for the registration, revalidation and collection of their permanent voters' cards, hence the sensitization of the citizens in the region. The Director of Strategic Communications of the coalition, Samaila Musa, made this known while speaking with journalists during a sensitization walk held in Mina, titled "Get Your PVC to Rescue and Rebuild Nigeria."
It's not by saying on social media to abuse people or insult people and stuff like that. The only way you can express your anger is to go out there and get your PVC on the day of election. Don't sleep at home, come out in mass and vote for the candidate of your choice.
Chairman of Biase local government area in Cross River State, Ada Charles, has called on all eligible women across the state to ensure that they get their permanent voters cards before the deadline. Speaking in Calabar, the chairman explained that the permanent voters card is the only opportunity to make their votes count, and the needs to obtain it cannot be overemphasized.
This is time for your voice to be heard. It is time for people to know your mind, who where you want.
And the PDP Senate caucus is set to meet with the party's presidential candidate, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, to seek reconciliation with aggrieved members. The Senate Minority Leader, Senator Philip Aduda, disclosed this to journalists after a meeting of the lawmakers in Abuja.
The PDP caucus of the Senate resolved to meet the presidential candidate of our party and his vice presidential candidate, the running mate, and also to meet with aggrieved major stakeholders of the party to achieve cohesion and total peace in our party.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. So, someone was saying to me today that a loaf of bread is about 1,500, 1,000 naira, or even more in some places. And that is something that a lot of people are worried, because that's one of the staple food that virtually all Nigerians eat. If you don't eat it in a week, you probably will eat it maybe twice a week. I mean, you can't escape it. Bread is like almost a rampant commodity. But this matter we're discussing at this moment will probably be a matter for all Nigerians to get closer to their television set right now. Today, the federal government reports that it has recorded a 3 trillion naira budget deficit between January this year and April. At the presentation of the 2023-2025 medium-term fiscal framework in Abuja, the Minister of Finance explains that the deficit further highlights the fiscal challenges confronting the federal government. The minister also announced that the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, which had funded the fuel subsidy until last month, would henceforth leave that responsibility to the Federation, an action which, according to her, will create a strain on the economy. Take a listen to some of the soundbite at that event.
Oil and gas revenue and federally funded upstream projects for the reporting period. The projected fiscal outcomes in the medium term are presented under two scenarios, and we need inputs from this consultative forum on these two scenarios. So scenario one is a business as usual. This is assuming that the subsidy on PMS, which is estimated to be 6.7 trillion full year 2023, will remain and will be provided for. That is scenario one. That is, we don't remove fuel subsidy at all from January to December next year.
That's the Minister of Finance. Now, let's get to it. There are a lot of issues that I'd like to find out for myself and on behalf of Nigerians get some clarity, because what exactly is happening on this program, some of us don't like to discuss those figures because some of us are not mathematically or economically savvy. We want to know the bottom line. But tonight I'm being joined by the Director General of the Budget Office, Mr. Ben Akaboize, who joins us virtually. Thank you so much, Mr. Akaboize, for your time tonight. Give us a sense, first and foremost, for what we heard the Minister of Finance say, now that there's NNPC, whom you made reference that funding the fuel subsidy. Now, they probably will not even be remitting any money into the TSA any longer. Subsidy payment, the federal government has to source it. So where are you going to get the money to source for the subsidy, which we imagine will end in December this year, isn't it?
Well, thank you, Sheung. It's my pleasure to be here. First, let me clarify that as far as NNPC is concerned, the price at which petrol is sold to the public is a matter of government policy. And so for NNPC, their role simply has been as an agent of the Federation to import these products to meet the needs of the economy. And what they have done up until now, which is why they refer to it as a cost under recovery rather than a subsidy. But bottom line, it's tantamount to subsidy. What NNPC does, NNPC receives revenues on behalf of the Federation, whose oil assets it manages. And what they have been doing is, when they receive these funds, whatever costs they incur in bringing the products into the country, less the price at which, the approved price at which they sell it, which is the subsidy amount, they recover upfront from the revenues before they remit the revenues into the Federation account. And that's why when you look at our budget, you will not see subsidy as an expenditure item because it's an upfront deduction from revenues. You see it in the fiscal framework, which is approved by the National Assembly. And that's the authorization that NNPC has to be able to deduct those funds upfront. Now, what is going to change? Simply, all that's going to change. NNPC is still going to continue to manage those oil assets, receive the revenues. It's a 100% owned company by government. But instead of on a monthly basis coming to the Federation account, to Federation allocation committee to account for what it has received, what it has spent, and what is NNPC now will prepare its books, being a company registered under the Companies and Allied Matters Act. Sorry, and declare its profits. And out of those profits, it will pay dividends to the Federation. Now, as the Honourable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning explained earlier today, the pattern and the timing of the payment of those dividends is a matter that is still currently under discussion. But it will be such that, because governments, the states and the local government, the federal government has to run from month to month. So there has to be an arrangement where those dividends don't wait for the end of a full year to be paid. And there is a precedent. If you take the NLNG, for instance, the NLNG pays dividends on a quarterly basis. So, whether it's quarterly or monthly or whatever frequency is agreed, those dividends will be paid. Now, the other part of the discussion is to whether or not NNPC should pay the dividends in gross, and then, in turn, the government pays, them for whatever shortfall they incur in, procuring the products, or whether the NNPC will still be authorized to recover the cost of, those shortfalls before, remitting the dividends due to the government. And as the Honourable Minister said earlier today, the latter option seems likely to be the way to, that we will go. So the subsidy payments have never been NNPC's responsibility in terms of who bears the cost. They've always been borne by the Federation, the federal, state, and local governments. And NNPC has simply acted as an agent of the Federation.
So, because this is an aside from the major issue I'd like to discuss with you tonight. So, clarify quickly, because I asked, the subsidy regime will end by December this year. Is that right?
No. At the beginning of this year, the government announced an 18-month extension in the subsidy regime. So, 18 months from the beginning of this year is mid next year, June next year.
Okay. Now, so we're still going to be bearing that cost till next year. Give us, and the question is, any government that comes into power after May next year, May 29 next year, we still have to face that burden out of the scarce resource that Nigeria is facing now. But the question is that also clarify for us, because you are in the middle or in the forefront of cooking the budget. The story about NNPC not remitting, or that hasn't been remitting before this new regime into the TSA, into the Federation account for a while now. What is the true picture of things? Can you clarify for Nigerians?
Well, that is true. The Honourable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning confirmed that earlier today. What has been happening is essentially, as I said, NNPC receives revenues on behalf of the government. And then, they import these products, in particular petrol, which is the only product that is still subsidized. And because of the subsidy element in it, no private importers stay away from it because they have no assurance about to recover their money. Must we clarify that there is no embargo, there's no restriction on anybody importing petrol. The reason why NNPC is the only one importing petrol is because while NNPC has recourse to the Federation account to be able to recover whatever losses it suffers on importation of petrol, the private companies don't have that recourse, and so they've stayed away from importing petrol. So what has happened is up until this moment, this year, the total revenues NNPC has collected on behalf of the Federation from oil has gone into importing the products, because two things have happened. One, exacerbated by the Russia-Ukraine war. International oil prices have risen significantly, and the price of crude is the most important determinant of the price of the refined product. So whichever direction the price of crude goes, in that direction, the price of refined products will go. So prices of refined products have risen, sharply, coupled with constrained supply, which has, further added pressure to, upward pressure on prices. In our own particular case, we are suffering what you might call, a double whammy situation. Because while we are suffering the impact of the rapid rise in energy costs caused by, worsened by the Russia-Ukraine war, because even before that, prices were already, relatively high. But in our own case, on top of that, we have had a significant reduction in oil production volumes. In the first 4 months of this year, oil production has averaged 1.3 million barrels per day. Our initial 2022 budget was based on a production of 1.86 million barrels per day. Earlier in the year, when production looked like it was challenged, we revised that down to 1.6. But even at the lower target of 1.6, we're still 300,000 barrels short on a daily basis. That's a lot of money, revenues that are consequently being lost. And NNPC is the decline in production is principally caused by the massive crude oil theft and the vandalization of oil pipelines and infrastructure, production infrastructure in the Niger Delta. And so what we have now is at a time when all other major oil producing economies are suffering high inflation, but then also having a boom in terms of their revenues. We have a double whammy. We are experiencing what they call the tensions of a non-oil, all the non-oil economies that's experiencing significant inflationary tensions on account of high energy. But the oil economies are offsetting that by the bumper revenues that they are getting. But in our own case, we are experiencing the tensions of a non-oil economy in an oil economy because of...
Mr. Kabweze, because I understand that you don't have so much time with us tonight because of some other engagement, and I like a few questions in. In fact, I have not delved into some of the questions that I planned for the conversation with you, but this is very critical for my viewers tonight, and it's a fact that what assurances can we get from the federal government, speaking through you tonight, that there might not be any impact on the price of fuel, especially petrol? Would there be any jack in the price of fuel?
You are asking me a question that is above my pay grade.
I don't think so. You've analyzed some of these indices. You said we are being whammed in a double manner. I mean, this is a double whammy you called it. Yeah, so the question is, a lot of Nigerians, you have the facts, you have the figures, and you plan the books.
I've given you the facts, I don't make the policy decision.
Yeah, but I mean, you are very strong in some of these projections. Could it possibly affect the price of fuel? The situation we have found ourselves, when other countries of the world are enjoying the impact of the situation in Ukraine, Nigeria is not enjoying it. So could it affect the cost, the price of fuel?
I don't know what the answer to that question is, because it's not my decision.
Okay, let's move on to other issues so that we don't flog a dead horse. Now, How are you funding the deficit? We understand that the deficits are shot to the budget are shot beyond 3 trillion naira. Given that you cannot borrow, you cannot do majorly foreign borrowings because of the interest rate and all of that. So how are you funding the deficit?
Well, the deficit is being funded principally, from borrowings and mostly domestic borrowings at this point in time. Of course, we have access to some foreign, borrowings from multilateral and bilateral sources. The source of foreign borrowing that is clearly challenged at this point in time is accessing the international capital markets. And at this point in time, I don't believe that the DMO has any plans to do so for now.
So it does look like double trouble, perhaps double jeopardy for the nation. We're already crowded now in our borrowing, and the burden is very heavy now. So the question is, if you're looking towards the domestic borrowing, the question is going to be the impact on local business. And the question will be, are you not going to crowd out local business people if you're looking into domestic borrowing, the impact on domestic businesses?
Well, the reality is those bonds are issued domestically, issued in the domestic market. It doesn't mean that only domestic investors, buy into the bonds. That's one thing to note. So you still have some, external flows into the market to buy bonds. But beyond that, for now, it does appear that the domestic market has the absorptive capacity. And if you look at the balance sheets of the banks, it's not like it's not like there's a pressure coming from the private sector on their balance sheets for funding.
Now,
a lot of the banks seem
quickly,
very liquid.
Before. All right. So that's worrisome also. When you talked about the impact of oil theft and the reason why we are not able to produce, other nations are cashing in and cashing out on the situation in Ukraine. Now, what are you doing to ensure that you change that scenario that is not allowing us to be able to get as much from the situation that we have found ourselves?
Well, it's a security situation, and it's not one that the most that we can do on our own part is to allocate as much resources as we can to the security agencies to be able to deal with that situation. But beyond that, it's a job for the security agencies. And basically, so, that's NMPC.
Are they giving you, because you need to make projections? By now, I think you'll be planning for the 2023 budget. Are they telling you anything different from what you have heard? Whether anything will change as far as the security? Why has there been an increase in the oil theft? Some people must be benefiting from this. Who are these people? What do we know? What can we tell Nigerians? There must be some level of clarity and information, transparency to the Nigerian people. If there is oil theft and Nigeria is groaning in all of this revenue problem, what do we know? What can you tell us?
Well, Sean, what we know is that there is oil theft of what people have classified as industrial scale. And therefore, if it is of such a scale, then it must be visible. Okay, therefore, some of that, of course, is, what people use to operate what they call the illegal refineries. But there's a sense that that is only a small part of the capacity of those refineries they can't basically handle all of the quantum of oil that is being stolen on a daily basis. And therefore, without a doubt, I mean, this is something that is bigger than the activities of the oil refineries. But I don't have the answers. I in my office here in Abuja, and not there in the production fields. But as we said, it's a job. It's a job for the security agencies to basically secure oil production.
The picture looks glooming, because now if we need money, if there's any time Nigeria needs money, it is now to fix this economy, because things are not, especially the price of commodity is not looking good at all. And that's perhaps where I would like us to anchor on this conversation, and quickly too. The CBN has come out to say part of the problem that it is facing on its own side in fixing the challenges of the economy is outside of its own powers, and that's outside of the powers of the CBN. What are you doing to bring down the inflation in the country on that, on the fiscal side now?
Well, essentially, the inflation in Nigeria comes from two sources. You have the structural issues, okay? And then, of course, you have the money supply issues. Central bank's action in moving interest rates and all of can only affect the money supply side of this. But on the fiscal side, we're tackling matters like the challenge of infrastructure that add to the cost of doing business. Of course, the government has to deal with the challenge of security as well, because food inflation is a major contributor to the inflation, and the insecurity in the agricultural, major agricultural belt, is contributing to that. So that has to be, addressed. Other challenges like, simply managing the activities of whether it's regulatory agencies that are within the ambit of government and so on, and their impact on the cost of doing business and all of that. Those things we have to deal with so that we can bring down the cost of that. That's what we're doing on the fiscal side.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Ben Akabo, is the Director General of the Budget Office. Thank you so much indeed for some of the clarity and perspective that you are giving to us on the state of the economy. Thank you so much indeed. Let me allow you go attend to some of the business, and thank you for creating the time.
Thank you, Shem. It's my pleasure.
Appreciate it. Well, we'll take a break, and when we return, our attention will be on security. The federal government plans a ban on mining and motorcycles in the country. This is the information the federal government is giving after the National Security Council meeting. Mr. Mike Ejiofor, a former DSS chief, will be joining us right after now. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back. Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us on the program. The National Security Council today announced that it is considering a nationwide ban on motorcycles and mining activities in the country as part of its strategy to curb terrorist activities and checkmate loopholes and cut off the sources of funding that of the terrorists. It's part of the outcome of the meeting presided over by President Buhari at the State House in Abuja. After addressing the State House correspondents after the meeting chaired by the President, the Attorney General of the Federation and the Minister of Justice, Mr. Abubakar Malami, said that investigations are still ongoing, especially to establish the correlation between mining and motorcycles, which they suspect provide funding for the supply of arms to the terrorists. Take a listen to the AGF.
The government is looking into the possibilities of addressing those issues as canvas, issues associated with logistics of terrorists and bandits, issues associated with blockage of the funding, the source of funding, issues associated with the likely possibility of general suspension of mining activities, if indeed it is established, a nexus and connection is indeed established, and then the issues associated with consequences for dereliction of duty, if indeed any is established, arising from the report being expected and anticipated relating to the Kuje Correctional Center. The government will look into that possibility with particular regard to restrictions on use and distribution of motorcycles, among others, which is the most conventional means, logistical means being deployed by terrorists.
Let's get into it. Now, one day looks like one trouble. And now let's look at what this means and how we get out of here, especially a nation that is facing a huge security challenge. How do we get out of it? Is that the solution? Let's hear from one man who spent almost all his life in the intelligence community, Mr. Mike Ejiofor, a former director at the DSS. Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Ejiofor, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Do you think that decision of the National Security Council today is the right way to go?
Well, I don't think it's a decision yet. It's being proposed.
They're contemplating it.
Contemplating banning of motorcycles.
Nationwide.
Nationwide. And it has a wider, very large implications, socio-economic implications. Because if we say there's a ban on motorcycles all over the country, how would people be traveling, especially in rural areas and the remote communities? That brings a challenge. But I think what government should do in this area, a blanket ban is going to cause a lot of problems, socio-economic problems. So if there are established areas where you have these motorcycles, especially in the Northwest, where you have a lot of them moving in 300s, they are not passenger motorcycles, you know, they are bandits moving in 100s and 300s. And that becomes a problem. So if you ban the use of a motorbike in such areas, one can understand it. But a blanket or overall ban in the country, I think is going to cause a lot of, like I said, it's going to cause a lot of socio-economic problems. It's going to even create some security problems, because definitely crime will be on the increase. But if the government thinks it wise that there must be a general ban, then there must be alternatives, palliatives created by government in terms of, other means of transport that can reach the remote areas. Again, how do you regulate it? We have some people, even the ban within Abuja, you see some law enforcement agents, in addition to courier services, still using the motorcycle. So the security agencies agents on their part will still continue to use that. So if there must be a ban, it must be a general ban. But I think that was going to cause a lot of problems. I don't go with the idea of a general ban. But when in areas that are established that motorcycles are used for commission of crimes, I think there should be a partial ban, and government observes and looks at it before taking a general decision.
It looks to me like you have a knife close to the jugular and you are being pushed to the wall. Then you imagine what next you will do. And in this situation, the federal government perhaps have been, from all the intelligence they're getting, it looks to me that they're aware that these guys perpetrate the evil through the use of motorcycle. They've used it as form of transportation. And it's also, I mean, we've heard a lot of intelligent people like you speak about the fact that these guys penetrate using, in fact, the military have also devised a means of using motorcycle also. You see them in the theater of war. They've also devised their own special motorcycle, because where these terrorists also can access, they also want to access. Wherever we discover that vehicles can get to those areas. Now, that on one hand. The other side of it is mining activities. A lot of people wonder, what is the correlation?
Mm-hmm. You see, it's very funny. If you look at the issue of mining, it's only the federal government that's authorized to mine. So any other mining is
that
illegal.
gives permission for mining.
Exactly.
We have private interests who are.
Yes, like in other areas, you have like solid minerals can give permission for mining, but it's exclusive of the federal government. Petroleum, for instance, the crude oil, the federal government is exclusively entitled to explore oil. But in other areas, like in Zamfara and other areas, you have issues of gold and other solid minerals. Governments give permission. So anybody that is mining without permission is doing carrying out illegal activities, and that is what gave rise to the criminality, especially in Zamfara, in the northwest, where people go about mining and selling this, and also the terrorists, the bandits, get involved in this mining, use it to purchase more arms, and I'm happy that the federal government has established the link between, the correlation between the mining and the source of funding for the terrorists. So there must be not just banning mining or people who are not, who don't have a license to operate, but it must be strictly regulated and monitored to see those who are involved, because there are lots of people who are still involved in illegal mining, and you never can
so
tell.
So maybe if it's banned, then they might be able to at least monitor. I mean, if it's banned now, you don't have anywhere to hide.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, I mean, could there be the possibility that there are, in fact, some mining sites that the federal government is not aware of?
The federal government, there's no way the federal government with intelligence will not be aware of all those illegal mining sites. But the question is, what action is government taking? And
so
I think
question,
that's why the government...
Mr. Ejiofor, I mean, I'm asking this question because even in oil that is our mainstay, the federal government, you've just heard Mr. Kabo saying that the oil theft in Nigeria is on an industrial scale. I mean, so, and the nation's security has not been able to stop it.
That's the problem, is the issue of corruption. If we cannot stop oil theft, then how do we stop the mining of that's on the land? You see, it's not easy for this oil theft without the collaboration of some multinationals and locals who get involved in all this. I mean, I was involved in an investigation while I was in the service, and I had an encounter with one of the illegal operators exploring oil, the crude oil. And he asked me a question pointedly, whether he has a vessel. And I said, yes, no, you don't have a vessel. And he asked, is he in the military? So we need, and I said no. He said, okay, that for us to stop the theft, we should look at the multinationals, our security agencies, and the foreign multinationals who come here to, it's a syndicate, it's a cartel that's involved in this oil theft. It's not just
and these are not mere men.
They are not mere men. They are backed by powers.
The rich.
They are backed by powers in government. So,
really?
Yes. They are backed by powers in government, and that's the issue of corruption. If we can account for our oil, the crude oil we produce in this country, I don't think we'll be looking for money or borrowing money.
Because, I mean, the question is sad that what has become our mainstay, the mainstay of our economy, that is the cash cow. That's where the nation gets money from. Now, there is a crisis in Ukraine, where other countries of the world, and that has caused the crisis, the Russia-Ukraine war, has caused the price of the oil, the crude oil to go up. Now, instead of us to benefit from that, we are not able to benefit. And it's a window for you to have cash, cash out or cash in, whatever the case may be. From that, we are not able, and it's so sad that it's also a group of people that are benefit. And it comes to a point in this country also that we realize that it's just a few people that are also benefiting from the fuel subsidy scam. I mean, that has come to light in this country.
We cannot benefit from what's going on because for obvious reasons. First of all, we export our crude oil. The one we export is less than the one stolen. Then we don't have refineries. If we had refineries, we refine locally and get the benefit of. But since we don't have refineries and are still out, it's double jeopardy for us as a country.
And the one that we import, Mr. Ejiofor, I've heard the Minister of Petroleum, State for Petroleum, say that Benin Republic, and in fact, Chad, that has a refining capacity that can suffice for the running of that country. A lot of them in that country prefer the fuel, the petrol that comes from Nigeria. And so Nigeria subsidizes their petrol, but it gets outside of the country and benefits other countries. It's a sad scenario.
It's an irony, and it's quite unfortunate because there's nothing we can do about it since our oil is cheap. And you cannot also transfer the inefficiency and the ineptitude of people, of the operators of this, to the citizenry by increasing the price of fuel so that it's small go out. We cannot continue that way.
Well, if you are to advise the president now, I mean, imagine that the president is watching right now and millions of Nigerians who are by their television. I mean, the killings that we see in the country is debilitating. It causes one to weep. And you see people being killed and all of that. And coming out with this decision by the Security Council, what, for instance, would you say is the way out that can cause a major strike in the spine of those who are perpetrating this mayhem in the country? Would you, for example, declare a state of emergency or national security if you have the chance to do so?
If I have my chance, honestly speaking, I will declare state of, if I'm the president, I will declare state of emergency on security. And what does it mean when people talk about declaration of state of emergency? Reinforcing the security architecture, getting proper funding, getting training for the security agencies. Now, look at the issue, the statement issued by the Minister of Interior after the meeting today. I think I've been vindicated. You recall that when we were here, I called for investigation into the jailbreak, for instance, in Kuje and other areas. He has come out openly. Government has set up, the House of Representatives has set up an investigation inquiry. And not only that, he has also admitted on behalf of government that intelligence was provided, but the people had no capacity. That was exactly what I said here last time. And that brings to question again the issue of motorbikes. The investigation will definitely reveal how did these people come to attack. Did they come in buses? Did they come on foot? Did they come on motorbikes? So with these investigations, we will reveal all this, and appropriate sanctions will be taken against it. Is it not a national embarrassment that the minister admitted that such a facility like Kuje Correctional has no cameras? Can you believe that? It's a national embarrassment.
On a final note, Mr. Ejiofor, you've said that you will ask, if you have the powers, ask for a declaration of state of emergency. But on the side of the state, because we are seeing pockets of violence in several states of the Federation, outside of the purview of the federal government, although national security is on the exclusive list. What are the other things that are needed to be done urgently?
Urgently, honestly, we have challenges in our hand. We are going to election. We must prioritize our security in the first place, because without security, there won't be any development, not just development. We're talking of citizenry. The primary purpose of government is protection and welfare of the security. Every day we hear of killings. We hear of kidnap. Catholic priests being kidnapped and being killed. I mean, government should do something about it very seriously and urgently too.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mark Ejiofor, former director of the DSS. Thank you so much indeed for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Let's tell you that the EFCC has said that it will tomorrow arraign a former Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, before Justice A.O. Adeyemi Ajayi of the Federal Capital Territory High Court, Abuja. He will be dogged alongside 3 others, Godfrey Olusegun Akindele, Muhammad Kudu Usman, and Gezawa Commodity Market and Exchange Limited on a 109 billion scam that the EFCC is investigating. That is the news just coming in. Of course, we reported to you yesterday that the Minister of Information has said it is unfair for the NLC to say it will go on a solidarity protest in support of the Association of University Lecturers. Let's get to the reaction from the president of the NLC, who joins us virtually from London, Mr. Ayuba Waba. Thank you so much, Mr. Waba. Albeit we have just a few minutes to go on the program. Give us your reaction to what the federal government said. The federal government has said you are taking sides in this matter. You are supposed to be involved in resolving this crisis, but now you're already taking sides.
Well, thank you very much, Sewun. I think the context of the statement of the Minister of Information is not correct. We are not just on solidarity. All the 5 unions in the education sector and their workers are members of NLC. All their workers are members of NLC. And a lot of effort have been put in by NLC in the past 5 months to try to resolve the issue. We have actually sent early warning signals on what needed to be done. We have sent notes verbal on what needed to be done. But here we are, 5 months down the line, our children are at home. No civil society will actually celebrate this. And to say that we are in solidarity is not solidarity. It's actually an issue that is dispute of rights. It affects our members directly. Their salary have been frozen for the past 5 months, and their family and themselves have been in disarray. The last meeting, which actually NLC facilitated, where our very revered traditional and religious leaders were there, there was actually a request by government to actually adjourn the meeting for 6 weeks for them to be able to do the needful. It's more than 2 months now. So basically, I think we need to be celebrated and appreciated the fact that a lot of effort have been put in by the NLC. This is a prompting. Nowhere in the world at the status of NLC that our members will be denied salary and their families for 5 months. And what are the reasons? The reasons are clear. Agreements signed were not respected. It's a core labor issue. And I think I'm surprised that Lai Mohammed said basically that we are in solidarity. It's not solidarity. Possibly he doesn't understand the provisions of our labor law and what NLC stands for, and how do we protect our members and also protect the interests of even we, the families, and also the parents of these children, but importantly, even the children, because time lost cannot be gained. So these are the context of the argument.
All right. Quickly, Mr. Waba. Yeah. Mr. Waba, quickly, let me ask you. So you're going ahead with the planned protest. Is it going to be a nationwide protest? And when are you planning to resume? In view of the fact that the federal government said, the president has asked the Minister of Education to revert to him in 2 weeks to resolving this matter, are you still going to go ahead in view of this new scenario playing out?
Let me tell you, Sam, if we are serious, all the unions are ready. This issue can be resolved under 24 hours. And that is why it has lingered for so long. And we have had many, many other versions why we have not been able to make progress. The interest of NLC and all our affiliates that are involved is for the issue to be resolved. And even this one-day protest is just a panacea, because 2 decisions were taken by the National Executive Council meeting. First is the issue of protest, and then where there is no result, the NEC also decided that there will be a 3-day national strike action. And we thought we were very reasonable. This decision was not taken yesterday. It was taken on the 30th of June. Nobody reverted to us. Nobody even invited us to say what is happening, despite the fact that we communicated to all the agencies of government. This is how industrial relation matters and life of people and our children should be treated. So I think we should be commended.
So Mr. Waba, this is just this one-day protest you're talking about is just a protest, is not downtooling. You're not asking your workers not to go to work.
No, it's a protest which is allowed internationally under the UN Charter for Human and People's Rights, and also sanctioned by our constitution, that where people feel that dissatisfaction, that they can assemble freely to actually hear their views about those issues and also propose solutions. And for 50 years, NLC have used all of these tools, and they conform with laws, regulations, and the procedures in our country.
All right, Mr. Waba, just before I allow you to go, I'm totally out of time, but if you can just do a 30-second clarification for us on your relationship with the Labour Party. They have Mr. Peter Obi as a running mate now, which is Senator Dati. Are you still going ahead with your planned support for the Labour Party and mobilizing your members to vote for that party? Is that still your plan? Oh, there. We lost that connection with Mr. Ayuba. Trust me that we'll try to get his view on that question, which a lot of you perhaps will want to listen to. But that's it for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm sure Kimale. Bye for now.